Okay, let's jump right into this explainer because we have an absolutely incredible thought experiment lined up today. One that is going to completely shatter your understanding of what life in the universe can actually look like. We're so used to looking for water and oxygen when we search the stars, but what if we just threw out the carbon rulebook entirely? Today, we're exploring a breathtaking concept straight from the archives of xenobiology. We're going to take a detailed look at a human equivalent species known as the Korvath, who live on a world called Hephaestus Prime.
Dr. Eris Thorne's realization here perfectly sets the stage for our journey. We are completely leaving behind the fragile, watery biology of Earth for something forged in an absolute inferno. We've long suffered from what Thorne calls carbon chauvinism. It's this ingrained belief that carbon is the only brush the universe can possibly use to paint the masterpiece of sentience. Well, Hephaestus Prime proves the universe has a much more terrifying and, quite frankly, magnificent palette.
Now, take a look at this number. Isn't it wild to think that at 230 degrees Celsius, which is about 446 degrees Fahrenheit, liquid water on the planet Hephaestus Prime only exists as superheated steam high up in the atmosphere? This is the everyday ambient surface temperature of this terrestrial world. To understand a creature made of metal, you have to understand the crucible it was born in. And on this planet, the heat is constant, oppressive, and absolutely essential for their survival.
Our kind of carbon biology would literally incinerate in an environment like this, but this is exactly where the Korvath thrive. The oceans here aren't water, they are antimony trichloride, a dense, heavy solvent kept liquid by the extreme 2.4 atmospheres of pressure. And that air, completely devoid of oxygen. It's a volatile, highly toxic mix of nitrogen and dense yellow-green chlorine gas. To us, one breath is absolute poison. To them, it's the breath of life.
So you might be wondering, how does life even exist here? Well, unlike carbon's simple linear chains, titanium acts as the miraculous building block in this world. Because titanium is a transition metal, it utilizes active d orbitals. Without getting too bogged down in the chemistry, this basically means it can bond in massive, super stable 3D geometric shapes that carbon simply cannot pull off. In those primordial halide oceans of Hephaestus, these complex titanium structures form the very first self-replicating metallic macromolecules.
All right, let's move into Section 1, Anatomy of a Hunter, focusing specifically on kaolin of the Korvath.
To really grasp how this biology works, picture Kaolin, a native Korvath hunter who looks like a man sculpted from anodized bismuth and polished steel, tracking prey across the igneous wastes. Notice the stark contrast here. We have light, calcium phosphate frames built for Earth. Kaolin has a synthesized titanium aluminide skeleton. Titanium atoms are much heavier than carbon, but this specific compound gives his bones extraordinary tensile strength and heat resistance. So while he stands about 2 meters tall, just like us, he's astonishingly dense. He weighs nearly 1,000 pounds. That's about 450 kilograms.
But here's the crazy part. Despite his immense weight, he moves with terrifying grace. He doesn't have soft, sliding protein filaments for muscles like we do. His muscles are piezoelectric titanite polymers. So when a nerve delivers an electrical current, the molecular geometry of these crystals instantly phase shifts. They snap and contract with the literal crackle of a high-voltage capacitor. This allows Kaolin to clear a 10-meter gap in a single bound with explosive, crushing kinetic force. Just imagine witnessing that kind of power.
Moving right along to Section 2, the internal forge. Let's look at their respiration, circulation, and digestion.
Kaolin is essentially a walking biological foundry. Think about this for a second. If Kaolin breathed oxygen, he would produce titanium dioxide inside his lungs. That's actual solid rock. Obviously, you can't exhale a rock. Instead, he breathes that toxic chlorine gas through vents along his jawline. The local crystalline plants then absorb the titanium tetrachloride gas he exhales and release chlorine back into the air. It's a flawless, brilliant mirror of Earth's carbon-oxygen cycle, just transposed into the extreme chemistry of heavy metals.
Deep inside his cells, Kaolin's mitochondria act like blazing biological furnaces. He creates massive amounts of energy through a highly exothermic reaction, biosmelting the complex titanium polymers from his food with that inhaled chlorine. Now, on Earth, the byproduct of this titanium tetrachloride is a liquid. But remember that 230-degree ambient temperature? At that heat, it boils into a gas, allowing him to easily exhale it as a dense, colorless mist.
Naturally, an internal forge like this requires a vastly different circulatory system. Instead of iron, his pressurized, beautifully violet-hued blood uses vanadium to carry the chlorine. And a regular, rhythmic pumping heart just wouldn't be enough for his immense mass. He has a dual-chambered heart operating like a continuous biological turbine. And get this, if he gets cut, specialized enzymes in his blood cause the titanium ions to cross-link with the atmospheric chlorine immediately, forging an instant metallic armor scab. No band-aids required.
Digesting metal flesh requires a stomach that functions literally like an industrial vat. Kalen's stomach is lined with sacrificial layers of a Teflon-like biopolymer just to protect him from his own biological hydrofluoric acids. He utilizes boiling aqua regia equivalents and massive metal core enzymes anchored by tungsten and molybdenum to literally rip apart titanium chains. And after absorbing the nutrients, he ultimately excretes unreactive solid glass-like silicate pellets.
Next up is Section 3, the solid-state mind, which is essentially a quantum biological computer.
As the twin suns set, Kalen scans the horizon using eyes made of pure biological root-Lyell lenses, tracking heat signatures across the electromagnetic spectrum. But how does his brain process all this? Well, our carbon-based nervous system relies on a clunky chemical exchange of ions, which completely caps our reflex speed. We're painfully slow compared to him. Kalen possesses a fiber-optic, solid-state brain made of doped titanium dioxide nanotubes. His thoughts are governed instantaneously by the flow of electrons. Running optimally at 230 degrees Celsius, his reflexes are, for all intents and purposes, instant.
Because the incredibly dense atmosphere of Hephaestus Prime carries sound so efficiently, Kalen can actually hear tectonic shifts deep underground. Instead of fleshy eardrums, he has thin diaphragms of piezoelectric metallic foil deep in his auditory canals. His clan communicates using an acoustic symphony of metallic chimes, booming clicks, and sounds like striking anvils. But they also have cranial crests that project tight beam radio frequencies. So yeah, they effectively have direct bioradiotelegraphy.
And that brings us to Section 4, birth, culture, and death, concluding with a process known as the rusting. Returning to his clan's geometric fractal caves, Kylan arrives just in time for a forging. This event reveals the truly mind-bending way a species made of heavy metals reproduces. Forget the classic double helix. The Korvath rely on TNA. By utilizing titanium's ability to bond with up to 6 molecules simultaneously, they pack an unimaginable amount of genetic data into a single millimeter. It's a hyperdense, fractal helical cylinder holding billions of times more information than DNA. It's an absolutely massive upgrade in biological data storage.
Gestation for the Korvath is essentially 3D printing on a molecular scale. They exchange ligand-coded templates and then high-heat electrochemical processes meticulously deposit unbonded titanium atom by atom. The whole process culminates with an infant physically shattering its glass-like spun silica amniotic shell and taking its very first breath of chlorine gas. It emerges completely perfect, already preloaded with instinctual data from that incredibly dense TNA matrix. For a species that can easily live up to 4 Earth millennia, biology and technology are functionally identical. Since their entire biology is based on manipulating metals, their culture is inherently metallurgical. They are literal biological blacksmiths. If Kalen suffers an injury that is just too severe to heal naturally, his kin step in as master surgeons, using bioelectric arcs to literally weld his wounds back together.
But even they don't live forever. They don't age through cellular decay like we do. Instead, after thousands of years, microfractures in their polymer chains accumulate. They eventually succumb to molecular metal fatigue in a highly poetic, tragic process they call the rusting. Their bioturbines finally fail, their metabolic fires dim, and the harsh atmospheric halogens finally take over, slowly oxidizing their bodies.
The amazing part is, without metabolic energy, a deceased Korvath doesn't rot. They petrify. High on the cliffs overlooking the clan, the trace moisture and halogens slowly convert their bodies entirely into pure, inert titanium dioxide crystals. They become these magnificent ancestor pillars, perfect, eternal monuments standing silent vigil against the toxic winds of their homeworld.
Let's bring it back to Dr. Eris Thorne for a second. If carbon is the biology of the Earth, titanium is the biology of the anvil. Knowing that creatures like Kalen could be out there, striding across oceans of liquid metal, profoundly expands our understanding of chemistry's indomitable force. The Korvath show us that out of utter hostility, out of an absolute inferno, life can forge a society, it can hunt, it can love, and it can thrive under a deadly sky.
I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder as you look up at the stars tonight. Is life really just a fragile film clinging to a wet rock, or is the cosmos infinitely more wondrous and terrifyingly alive? If carbon isn't the only answer, what else is hiding in the extremes of the universe, just waiting to be discovered? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep wondering, and I'll catch you next time.
Please like and subscribe.